Okay, before we start the show, I want to let you know about an awesome new feature we just released, and you can get started with instantly. It's Instagram shopping. So we're now fully integrated with Instagram, so when you take pictures of your products and post them, you can now tag them just like you would people, and now your product is instantly shoppable from your product feed. It's that simple, super easy to apply, so please check out ecwid.com/Instagram for some more details. Sign up. Let's make this happen. All right, back to the show.
This is the Ecwid e-commerce show with your host, Jesse Ness, along with Richard O'Tay.
How's it going, Richard?
I'm super excited today. It's a big one for us.
This is a big one. Super excited today. Actually, in front of me, I have a book in front of me that I read probably 20 years ago when I was in college that I applied at a business that I was in then, and I've applied ever since. So super pumped to hear from the original source on this one.
Yeah, today we have with us the guru of systems, processes for basically structuring your business for growth from a company of 1 to a company of 1,000. We have the Michael E. Gerber in-house this morning, and he is author of multiple books, the most common probably known, the EMyth Revisited, Beyond the EMyth. He has multiple books in different verticals in which he's co-authored with other authors as well. And he has some interesting new projects that sound very, very intriguing that we're going to learn more about at the end of the show. Right now, every week, Jesse, we pretty much cover a lot of the technical pieces of e-commerce, but wanted Michael to really go in and help these entrepreneurs basically kind of take them all the way through why it's okay to dream and why you should dream. It's part of the process of becoming an entrepreneur. And then, we'll take all the way through some of the things they could do when they're first getting started and then maybe when they're plateauing as well. But first and foremost, let's bring in Mr. Michael E. Gerber. Welcome, Michael. We're glad to have you in.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I love being here.
And so when an entrepreneur first starts thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, what do you encourage them to do? I know I'm familiar with the dreaming room, and we don't necessarily have to go all the way into the dreaming room, but how important is the dream?
Well, it's everything. It's everything from the beginning to the middle to the end. It's the reason you're doing it. And so the reason they're doing it is what effectively I engage them in. So why are you doing this? So what does this mean to you? So why is this important? So why is this important to the people you believe you want to take it out to? So what are you going to give to the people you're taking this out to? So if I don't find something compelling in that, I know that there's a lot of work to be done. And the problem is, having called on literally hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of small business owners down the street knocking on doors, I mean the real doors, not the electronic door, the real door, the doors that people can shut in your face, the door that nobody wants you to walk into, the real doors. The heroes back then, my guys back then, my guys and my ladies, would knock on doors to engage every single small business owner in a story. So understand the story. So the critical element that's missing in almost every small company I've ever walked into is a compelling story. Human beings live for stories. And so what's the story? Well, understand the Torah is a story. You understand the New Testament is a story. You understand Apple is a story. Google is a story. Every company that's ever been started is a story. And so every individual who starts a company has to become and discover the storyteller within them to discover the real reason they're doing this. And the problem is, for every single one of them, the real reason they're doing this is money, meaning to make a living. So every single person I've ever spoken to, bar none, their answer would be to make some money. Not just some money, to make a living. But not just some living, but to make a really groovy living. And not just a groovy living, to make a whole bunch of money. The millionaire next door. That's why the millionaire next door attracts all that greedy, stupid stuff that sits inside of everybody. I want to be free. I want to be independent. I want to have not to work my butt off doing it. I want. And that's the beginning of the conversation. That's the most compelling conversation you can ever have with anybody, because as you begin to, you truly discover what's missing in this picture, what's missing inside of this human being who's off the rail, not on the rail. And you guys know, you've been in the business for a long, long time. Most people you meet are off the rail, not on the rail. So my job is, first of all, to get them to see that. So what's missing in this picture is the most important conversation one can have in order to get to the most important reason for being in business that one can have, like Steve Jobs, like the Google boys, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
So why do you think so many people have a hard time dreaming in general? It's like maybe they daydream a lot, but what is it that seems, do you think they feel it's daunting, or they just too quick try to think of the money piece? Or
no, dreaming happens. You go to sleep, you have a dream. You don't go to sleep to dream. Dreaming happens. You don't make it happen. So first of all, nobody's ever been taught to dream. We never were. We never were taught to dream when we were 4 years old. We were never taught to dream when we were 12 years old. We were never taught to dream when we were 26 years old. When we went into the military, the sergeant didn't say, dream.
Right. I think that seems like the last thing drill sergeant
It's
would
the
say.
last thing he had in mind, right? And when we went to MIT, nobody said dream. So effectively, it's because we don't even, it's foreign to us. So it's foreign to us, especially what I call intentional dreaming. Intentional dreaming is an act of dreaming for a very specific reason, and that reason goes back to what's missing in this picture. And what's missing in this picture for the vast majority of people on the planet is what it means to be a human being, what it means to be alive. And so that conversation is, in fact, the conversation behind the EMyth Revisited. So when people tell me, Michael, I read your book, and I reread it, and I reread it, and I reread it, et cetera, and so forth, or I read your book 20 years ago, and then I did your book 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, et cetera, they're really telling me that the book touched them in a way that a business book doesn't do. Business books don't touch us. Business books make us think. My job wasn't to make anybody think. My job was to make people feel. But to feel about how we think. So you understand the two are connected. To feel, heart and head, heart and mind. To feel about how we think. And the absence of any true meaning in our lives. Now understand, I'm not saying everybody is living a stupid life. Well, I would, but that would be upsetting to everybody I'm talking to right now.
Do we have to edit that out?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying, but it's very close to that. And so that was the motivation for everything I've done. So you understand, so what does it mean to lead a stupid life? And what does it mean to lead a true life that has true meaning? Well, I have to come face to face with what does that look like for me. So in the very first section of the 7 steps that I talk about in the EMyth Revisited, we don't start with the business, we start with your life. The first step is, what's my primary aim? My primary aim is, what do I wish my life to be like when it's finally done? I ask the reader to write their own obituary. I mean, to actually write their own obituary. They're now gone, and they've recorded, before they left, their obituary. What would you want to say? And suddenly you come to the real conversation about meaning. So when you introduced me as the systems guy, the structure guy, the et cetera and so forth, that's all afterward. Mm-hmm. You understand, the structure and the systems are all afterward. They're not the primary. They're the secondary.
Yeah, because you got to set them up according to the dream.
Of course.
Right.
Of course. The dream is the primary. The systems are the secondary. They're the means to. They're not the end. And so most often I'm misinterpreted by people who are caught in their minds as opposed to their hearts as a deep thinker. I'm not a deep thinker. I'm a deep feeler. In short, I deeply know that the meaning of my life is the whole of my life. Now, you know, because you celebrated it.
Yeah.
I just celebrated my 82nd birthday. So, you know, when you get to be 82, you know that there's 83, there's 84. My mom lived to 96. My dad died at 50. So understand, when I say this, I'm saying this with a very, truly mortal experience of this. Mm-hmm. So what does this all mean? And then it's gone. What does that mean? What was the point of all this? So the dreamer is the creator. The dreamer is the first principal personality of the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur is a dreamer, a thinker, a storyteller, and a leader. The dreamer has a dream, the thinker has a vision, the storyteller has a purpose, and the leader has a mission. My job is to help my client understand those and to engage with those and discover those inside of himself or herself, even if it takes him 3 years to do it. Mm-hmm. You understand, they're going to piss away that time anyway. Even if it took them 3 years, 5 years to do it, wouldn't make any difference. To suddenly come face to face with the reason you're here. I mean, the reason you're here.
Yeah. Big difference.
I mean, think about it.
Right.
And suddenly then we're working on a business to grow it from a company of one to a company of 1,000 that has a reason for being here, not just making a living. Do you understand? Any dummy can make a living. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, there are a lot of dummies not making a living. And, of course, I'm interested in those dummies who are not making a living. But understand, it's not because they're not making a living. It's because there is no reason for them being. So we got to find the reason. And that's the job. That's your job. That's my job. That's your job, Rich. Mm-hmm. It's our job. Our job is to find the reason. And then dig down deeper. Don't just accept a quickie, answer to the, so what are you here for? What are you here? Well, I'm here to make, I've heard so many stupid answers. Right. I'm simply saying it's not that. We're looking for the real one. And you'll know the real one the minute they say it, just as they will. Because it won't be just something. You follow me?
Oh, mm-hmm. Definitely. Well, I mean, in addition to that, some of the things that can kind of be assumed, although I don't like to do that too often, but I'd imagine reading between the lines and knowing a little bit more about you is it's going to take work no matter what, right? No one just comes out and hands out $1 million. Not that I've found yet. But it's going to take work. And so having that reason, having that why, having that fuel inside of you, that inspiration, when you have an inspiration of a dream, energy comes from places you've never even really knew you had.
That's important. It comes from places you never even were aware of, and that's energy. So the energy is the source of passion, and passion is the source of imagination, and imagination is the source of vision. So effectively, if Steve Jobs weren't consumed with passion, the passion of the Creator has a passion unlike any passion of any human being on the planet. The Creator, we're born in the image of God, it said, which means we're born to create. So you suddenly see there's a reason for us being here. We're born to create. We're born to create what? We're born to create a world fit for God. So I'm speaking to people who may not even believe in God. I don't know how anybody could not believe in God. The minute you stop believing in God, there's no other reason. There's no reason at all. You understand? No, none. Zero. It's the great story. It's the great story that people have told from the very beginning, from Adam and Eve. So effectively, we have to know what that story is. And we have to suddenly come face to face with our role in that story. And something magical happens. It literally is. You both know that because you've both and each done that. Something magical happens to you. You don't make it. It makes you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like I've written that book. It wrote that book. The reality is it does that. And it is the Creator within. And it's as separate from Michael sitting here speaking to you right now as anything we could imagine. So it's not me doing that, it's it doing that. My job is to get plugged into it. And in order to get plugged into it, I have to open myself to it. In order to open myself to it, I got to shut down all the other yes, but, and so forth that pretend to be it. Now, this might sound terribly, terribly whatever, but it is. Mm-hmm. But it's the truth. And every single client, I've had over 100,000 small business clients in the past 40 years. Every single one of those 100,000 plus small business owners who came to us because they read the story and they said, I got to do this. Every single one of them had a belief about something that was inhibiting them from creating. We had to get rid of that belief. We had to get rid of all the stuff that they brought with them to the conversation. So I invented what I call a blank piece of paper and beginner's mind. So the way you approach this is literally a blank piece of paper and beginner's mind. It's how you've approached everything you've ever created. I don't start whipping out something and drawing a schema. I don't do that. It never happens to me like that. I start writing words. I don't write them. It does. You may know, and I'm sure you received my monologues. Have you received my monologues, either of you?
I have.
Yes.
Yeah. So the monologues, there are now 200 of them. And I send one out every week. And they're what you might say are they're entrepreneurial poems. And so I write a poem once a week. Now, when I say I write a poem once a week, I don't really write a poem once a week. It writes a poem once a week. Because I sit down without a thought in my head and just start writing. Literally, without a thought in my head. There's not a plan has ever been put to work on a monologue. Like today, I think I'll write about never. Mm-hmm. I disallow it. I'm as interested in what's going to come as my reader might be. So we have about 10,000 people, subscribers to our monologues. But what you'll discover if you truly pay attention to the monologues, you discover how creation occurs. It's a fascinating thing. It's a fascinating thing. So that's what I've been doing for these past 40 years.
I love it. I could imagine, knowing a little more about you than we're going to have time to cover in this, 45 minutes, an hour. I know you could talk about this for the next 5 years, just this one piece, because it's so critical to it. And I would say, before we get into anything else, just to maybe bring in, even though you probably hate I'm saying this, to bring in the dream a little bit, to where someone can comprehend that it's okay to say something as big as you want to say it. Like, you want to end world hunger. You want to, you know what I mean? Like, some people think, the dream's got to be, I'm going to sell this widget and I'll pay enough to pay the family house and D. And it's like, that's not a dream.
No, those are objectives.
Yeah, that's not a dream. So what's something, just in maybe 2-3 minutes, that you would say, start with the beginner's mind, let the dream start to come out. At what point, knowing that you've done this thinking thing for a while, at what point do you think someone they'll feel something where they might be onto something? They're starting to touch what that real dream is, and we know they got to keep doing it. It could take 3 years, and I'm not trying to wrap it all up in a bow here.
Sure you are.
But
give us the hack.
But I'm trying to. Yeah, everyone wants a hack these days.
But if it didn't take 3 years,
no, and I'm still saying,
do it in
I'll
a
give
week.
you 5 minutes.
I'm just saying, how would they know they're starting to go down the path of
They'll know.
That's an actual real dream? They'll know when they know.
But
so
of course they'll know. How do you
telling
know
me
how do you know when you fall in love?
Yeah, you're being like my dad when I said, "How am I going to know when to tune a guitar?" And he
Right.
said, "You'll know when
You'll
you tune
know.
when you know how to tune a guitar."
Yeah.
Until then,
Yeah.
I just never understood that. Same darn thing.
Yeah,
Thanks,
same darn
Pops.
thing. Thanks, Pops. But hear me. Our dream in 1977, when I started the Michael Thomas Corporation, I was Michael, he was Thomas. It became to be the very first business coaching company on the planet. We invented business coaching. Now, that's an extraordinary thing to say, and people say, oh, come on. Couldn't have invented business coaching. It's like a $1.3 billion reality today. We invented small business coaching. And when we decided to do that, it was because I'd been working with small business owners by accident. My brother-in-law owned an ad agency, and he had a problem with one of his clients, and he asked if I would go talk to his client about a problem he had converting leads into sales. And I told my brother-in-law, Ace, if you're listening, hi, Ace. I told my brother-in-law, Ace, I don't know anything about business. And I don't know anything about technology because it was just at the beginning of the Silicon Valley. And Ace said, sure you do, Michael. You know more than you think you do. Just come meet with him, please. I said, okay, well, why not? No harm done. So I went to meet with Bob. And Bob asked me what I know about his business, and I said, nothing, Bob. And Bob says, well, what do you know about our product? And I said, less than that, Bob. So I don't know anything about your business. I know nothing about your product. He said, how can you help me? I said, I haven't a clue, Bob. Ace thinks I can. We got an hour to kill until Ace comes back. So let's talk. So it began with the assumption that I didn't know anything about business, and Bob did. Bob did because he owned one. So in my mind at that time, if a guy owns a business, he knows about business. Otherwise, why would he own one? You understand? Mm-hmm. So I just started asking Bob questions, and I discovered every time I asked him a question, he gave me back an anecdotal answer. In short, he really didn't have real answers, just anecdotes, sort of about, kind of like that. And we got to the point where I asked him about how he sells. And he tells me about his sales engineers. And what's a sales engineer? I'm a complete novice. You understand, I was 38 years old. I was a complete novice in that regard. Where have you been all your life? I've been doing what? I learned how to play the saxophone. I learned how to do this. I learned how to build a house. I mean, just stuff. I learned how to do stuff. I was a technician. We come finally to him describing what a sales engineer is. I said, well, why do you need an engineer to sell this? He said, well, they have to understand the problem that the customer has. And I said, well, do you understand the problem the customer has? He says, well, yeah, in the main. That's why we created the product. I said, so the product was created because you understood what the problem was that your customer likely had. So effectively, that's really your positioning statement, isn't it? You're really the solution to the problem your customer's got. So you don't need an engineer to figure that out. Obviously, all you need is somebody who is scripted in a sufficiently intelligent way that they get why you're there and why they need you. Because that's all that has to happen at the front end. That's how you convert the lead into the first benchmark in what we're calling a sale. So the question becomes, so what's the first benchmark? And he's already lost. He said, wait a second. I said, no, let me explain. The problem is you don't have a selling system because you don't understand the story. And the story is the ball game, Bob. He said, well, do you know how to write that story? I said, sure. He said, well, will you write it for me? I said, sure. So I said, Ace will figure out how much you got to pay me. Ace will pick me up. I'll talk to him about it, and then he'll come back to you. I'll see you shortly, Bob. And that was the end of the conversation. Ace picks me up. He said, what happened? I said, he just hired me. I said, he just hired you? How? I said, well, I told him I was going to fix his problem. He said, but you told me you couldn't fix his problem because you don't know anything about business. You don't know anything about his product. I said, well, that's still true. I don't, but that's very easy to learn. It's not the knowing about the product that's critical. I learned that in about 5 seconds asking him a question. What's missing is how we say that to the consumer. And all I got to do is write that. So that was the beginning of the second one, the third one, the fourth one, the fifth one, the sixth one, and I'm suddenly discovering the EMyth right there in front of me. And that is that Bob wasn't an entrepreneur, Mary wasn't an entrepreneur, Jimmy wasn't an entrepreneur, Jerry wasn't an entrepreneur. They were technicians suffering from an entrepreneurial seizure. They started a business to make a living, to sell a product without any understanding of what an entrepreneur really does and goes through in order to create a great growing company. My job, I saw, was to teach them. So I'm suddenly in the business of teaching small business owners whose business I don't know anything about and don't even care to, how to grow a great growing company. And as I'm doing that, suddenly Tom is introduced to me by Ace because I said I wanted to leave. I'm going to start my own company doing this. Tom came in. Tom spent a week with me, and he said, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? And as he's watching me do it, he said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to go start a business. He said, I want to go with you. So Ace, unfortunately, lost both of us. I'm sorry, Ace. I apologize. And we started a business to do just that. And that was the beginning of Tom's and my conversation about a dream, a vision, a purpose, and a mission. We didn't start doing what I knew how to do. We started by asking, what is the end game here? And we discovered our dream. My dream then, my dream still, is to transform the state of small business worldwide. Now, anybody listening to me right now can immediately write that down and say, okay, to transform the state of blank worldwide, that's the business I'm in. You follow me?
Yeah.
That's how easy it is to have a dream. But understand, I was really serious about it. You understand? This was a life's work. This was my calling. This came to me at the age of 38. I didn't go out setting out to do it. I didn't go out to, you follow me, to become an entrepreneur. It wasn't even in my mind. I was just doing Ace a favor talking to Bob. It just showed up. That's what happens. When I say it comes to you, it comes to you. If you're awake.
Right.
You understand? I was awake in that conversation with Bob. My entire being was in that conversation with Bob.
Well, and you obviously entered it with beginner's mind, too.
Of course.
It was built in. I don't know nothing about this.
I don't know anything about this. That's how I start everything. I don't know anything about this. So what? He says. That's a blessing. Better you don't know anything about this than you do. Because if you do, that immediately shapes the beginning of your enterprise. And it shapes it in a way that will never turn in unless you're lucky. You understand? It wasn't luck that I showed up at Bob's. It was something completely different that I could call it destiny. It's been my life's work. I could call it destiny. We've sold millions upon millions upon millions of these EMyth books. I call it destiny because it uncovered something inside of me I didn't know was there. You follow me? And there was no interest in it whatsoever until it woke me up and said, hello, Michael, guess what? Guess what we're going to do? So my dream, my vision was to invent the McDonald's of small business consulting. My purpose was to make it possible for every small business owner who's called to our story, to our message, to be as successful as a McDonald's franchisee or even Ray Kroc. And our mission was to invent the business development system that I could apply in every single small company on the planet, no matter what it does, what it sells, how it sells it, the business development system I could deliver through the hands of a minimum wage kid, just like McDonald's. A minimum wage kid, just like McDonald's. That was my small business coach. A minimum wage kid who didn't know anything about business whatsoever could take our system, the Michael Thomas Business Development Program, and deliver it to every small business owner on the planet. That was the idea. Mm-hmm. That's what we set out to do. A dream, a vision, a purpose, a mission. That's what every single person I'm talking to right now, suddenly, when they ask what's missing in this picture, they come face to face. Everything.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things I could talk to you for days on that, and it's like try to get onto one other or two other quick things, but thank you so much. That obviously we're going to give people a chance to get to know you more and where they should go to learn more about what you're doing these days. So we'll definitely be covering that before it's over. One of the things, though, I keep hearing you mention all the time is, as to Jesse pointed out, work on your business, not in your business. And one of the ingredients in that, based on your books that I've read and communicating with you as well, it comes to your other phrase of how to go from a company of one to a company of 1,000. And so let's just break it down to something it's not this simple, but let's try. Your first hire. You're a company one, you're going to a company of two. In most cases, and I know it's a little different with e-commerce, but not necessarily, from what you've learned over decades, is there a universal first hire? Is it totally unique to that business? Is it some hybrid of the above? What's your experience for usually hire number one?
Both are true. It's universal. It starts with a story. So in our case, we told a story. And we told a story, at our case, at the Michael Thomas Corporation, when we did our first hire. And our first hire is to explain who we are and what we do. And so that explanation I gave. And it was scripted. And I memorized it. Now, you understand I didn't really have to memorize it because I invented it. I created it, and I told it every single day. Because I told it every single day when I was calling on a small business owner. Hi, I'm Michael Gerber. You don't know me, but I'm the founder of the Michael Thomas Corporation, and we're about to change your life. Now, bear with me. It's only going to take about 2 minutes. But in 2 minutes, I promise you, I will change your life completely. All I'm going to do is to ask you to take out your calendar and let's find a date free for you to come to the most important business development seminar you have ever been to. It's called Key Frustrations in a Small and Growing Business and What to Do About Them. It's 3 hours long. I'm delivering it. If you're not right, you'll leave in the first 10 minutes. If you are right, and 99% of the people who come to that seminar are spellbound by the time it's done, you'll see why this call was the most important call of your life and your business. So let's see your calendar.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's beautiful. I see how it ties in with the dream, too, because if you have the dream and the why is bigger than you, and now it's easier for your employees to buy into the big dream. The employees or hires are also because
it has to.
It seems so obvious in hindsight, looking back, right?
It has to.
But it's because
listen, Google started an ice cream shop above an ice cream shop in Palo Alto. Their first office was a little one room above an ice cream shop in Palo Alto. Mm-hmm. Google started it in an ice cream shop. Google. You understand? One of the wealthiest companies in the world, if not the wealthiest company in the world, started a couple of guys above an ice cream shop. But what started it was a dream. And that was, it was going to provide the most important information about everything to everybody.
The funniest part about you bringing this up is I remember the day that do you remember the day Google actually went live? Like I remember seeing it.
Remember it. No.
I remember seeing it. It might not be the exact day, but it was the antithesis of every other search engine. Every other search engine had all these things everywhere, all over. It was just clouded and so confusing. And this one, you went to it and it was just blank. It was this blank page, like beginner's mind. Back to your, what's your dream? You know, type in what you want here in this little box, and we'll give you the most relevant stuff back. And everyone just made fun of that. I mean, they made so much fun. Look at this ugly thing. But that why was so big, and they stayed so true to it.
You got it. You got it. The story is everything. So understand when I say this, the story is everything. It's not just a piece of it. It's not a piece of the business development puzzle. It's the heart of it.
And the continuation of that story.
It drives everything.
Yeah. So now I understand, back to the question, your first hire, when you say it's both, this first hire has to be someone that can continue to tell the story. It's going to be slightly different in each business.
We were hiring a receptionist, our first hire.
Okay.
And we ran an ad and in the newspaper, and we invited them to a hiring seminar. And that first seminar for a receptionist had about 42 women and a couple of men in it, all in the seminar. So now we're telling a story to 42 people. We're not telling a story across a desk from an applicant looking at a resume. I didn't give a shit about a resume. All I cared about was our resume. She's not here to tell me about her. She's here to hear about me. So who are you? What do you do? Why is it important? And why should I be spending the next 30 minutes of my life to listen to it? You follow me? Mm-hmm. That was how we found our first receptionist. She was one of the 42. So then Tom and I interviewed each of the 42. At the end of the 30 minutes, we would say, now, if that sounds like something you're absolutely hungry for, say yes. If not, we want to thank you for coming in. Take care. You've heard our story. I'm sure you'll hear it again because we're going to be everywhere. And so many of them raised their hands, and everybody else sort of wandered off. And of the people who raised it, now we've been doing this for 40 years.
I think Bezos stole something from you. Do you know that he actually, I don't know the exact number, but it's somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000. They'll pay you to not work for him if you get far enough. If you get far enough down the process, they'll literally pay you to not work for him because they know you don't believe in the story if you're taking that money.
Yeah, of course. So you understand my point. My point is the story is everything. Everything. Not sort of everything. And this is not market speak. You understand? This is not sales speak. This is consciousness speak. That's how deeply invested in the Michael Thomas Business Development Program we were. This is how deeply invested we were in the company, the Michael Thomas Corporation. This is how deeply invested in transforming the state of small business worldwide. Do you understand the economic reality of the world depends upon small business? And small businesses suffer. That 1 year, 2010, there were 497,000 companies started, and there were 593,000 that went out of business in that same year. You take that number and you follow that number, and you're going to see it's the same. More businesses fail than are started. And 99% of the businesses that are started fail. So why? I'm saying they don't have a story. You follow me? They don't have a story.
So this is actually bringing me to a few things. One of which is we're definitely going to have Michael back on. Not that it's over yet, but we're definitely going to have him back on because one of the things as a storyteller myself that I feel compelled to help these business owners with is, you've heard me mention when we talked offline, I'm holding up a cell phone right now, and the opportunity is also the obstacle. There's all these other storytellers that are trying to jump in. They're on the Facebook, on Instagram, all these different places.
Yeah, but they're terrible stories.
No, of course. Yeah, no, most of them are. No, and I completely agree. That's why I said we'll eventually go back. But here's one question I have for you when it comes to that.
Let me finish that point.
Okay.
They're terrible stories because they're made to sell. They're not made out of meaning. They don't believe them. Do you understand? They don't believe them. Steve Jobs believed that. He told his story in the first Super Bowl that Apple ran their first commercial in. Do you remember that commercial?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I mean, David and Goliath. I mean, IBM and Apple. Tiny little Apple. Everybody loved that story. What a powerful... It lived at the heart of Apple forever. And I'm going to say until Steve Jobs left.
I'll have to agree. Even though I'm a huge Apple fanboy, everything changed that I've experienced since then, but that's a whole nother story.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's... So here's a question. The business, they've worked on their dream. They have their why. They know their story, so they know when these obstacles hit, they don't even seem sometimes like obstacles to those people. They're temporary bumps in the road to some degree because they're let's just say blinders aren't the right word, but the blinkers for the horse or whatever that, they're super focused. And so now they've started, they've got their first hire. Their first hire is someone that's going to be telling the story good, and I'm assuming every hire thereafter should be
they're telling the story,
into the story.
But more important, they're being the story.
Perfect. So then, that's perfect. So, and now all of a sudden, maybe this business finds itself plateauing. At what point... Because, like you said, your businesses evolve over time, and it kind of it creates itself along with you. Sounds like it's a bit of a co-creation going on. When you're plateauing in a business, what's a way to think or feel about it, in that, do I just need to stay the course and push through this and tell the story more, or can it be that proverbial, what I did to get me here isn't going to get me there? What do you feel about a plateau?
Well, first of all, you're speaking about a hypothetical that doesn't exist. That is, we're assuming then that the company we're talking about that's reached a plateau has a story. Mm-hmm. They've done that work. They found their dream. But you left out that they found their vision. And you left out that they found their purpose. And you left out that they found their mission. And you left out that they then went to work on the job, which is the client fulfillment system, to organize their client fulfillment system to deliver a profound positive impact that is literally alive with the dream, the vision, the purpose, and the mission.
So you gave me an easy answer. So if you find yourself plateauing, go back to the beginning. The beginning.
You've
but
skipped
of course,
some steps.
Yeah.
First of all, you always go back to the beginning. That's first. Always go back to the beginning. And what you'll discover is we have a system and we're not using it. Or we don't have a system and we're making it up as we go. And a whole subset of other possibilities. But you understand there's a process for all this. Mm-hmm. So the thing that we have learned over all these years, these 40-plus years now, is that there's a process. And the process is a religion. I mean, you believe in the process. We call it the Eightfold Path.
Speaking of, let's just let you have the rest of this time. Let's start with new beginnings. We're coming up. We got about 8-9 minutes here. I want to hear what you're beginning, what your new dream that you've been creating with your wife, Theyre, and what it is you're about with this radical you. Can you, because that has to do with this Eightfold Path. And I would love, in whatever way you want to spend this last bit of time, whether you want to go through the Eightfold Path first and then invite someone to learn more about where they can go to learn more about radical you, however you want to do it, the mic is yours. We both look up to you greatly. And
wonderful. Thank you. We came to the realization at my 80th birthday. Theyre always celebrates my birthdays in the most outrageous ways. I think we had about 70,000 people at the 80th birthday, and that was online. We had about 220 of them live, and Theyre had fooled me into speaking. She told me it was a speaking gig, and it was a gig, and I knew the business, and I knew the place. And so I went there and got up to speak, and I did my 45-minute speech, and then they all rose in standing ovation. Well, I knew everybody in the audience.
Something's fishy here.
He's saying something strange here. But at that birthday, we made the commitment that we have so much time. And what we have created, while it's spectacular and while it's truly transformed the lives of literally millions of small business owners throughout the world, now in 145 countries, we haven't really done it. We've done it for individuals, but we haven't done it for the world of small business, which is what I set out to do in 1977. So we raised the question, how are we going to do that? Well, now what we have to do is do it online. And now we have to do it in such a way that everybody can afford it. And now we have to do it in a way that everybody can do it. So we sat down to create a school. And we call it a trade school for new entrepreneurs. Now, understand when I say new entrepreneurs, I mean every person who's inclined to start a small business or already has started a small business. Inclined to start a small business, for whatever reason they have thought to create a small business or has already started a small business and is finding themselves stuck, as you were describing earlier. How to engage those people in the process? Well, we created the Eightfold Path to do that. And we called it From a Company of One to a Company of 1,000, the evolution of an enterprise. Because in fact, every single job on the planet is an enterprise in the making. If I was a painter painting a house, that job is an enterprise waiting to happen. If I was a dog walker, meaning I'm making a living walking somebody's dogs, and there are lots of people doing that, and you wouldn't believe it, it's $1 billion business today. Think about that. $1 billion business today, walking dogs. So what we had to do was to make a list of every job on the planet and then invite every single human being on the planet to transform their lives by awakening the new entrepreneur within them to transform the lives of everybody else. And to do that by creating a company of one and growing it to a company of 1,000. And that is built upon what I've just spoken about, the Eightfold Path. And it starts online, and it's very straightforward. I have a dream. I have a vision. I have a purpose. I have a mission. I have a job. I have a practice. I have a business. I have an enterprise. And the process online of doing that. So Radical You is a series of sessions, one each week, 52 sessions a year, all video sessions delivered by a Radical You teacher. And that Radical You teacher is that kid that I was talking about, a spectacular kid, a spectacular person who truly is invested in our story and in the story of the lives of every student who's called to us. And she learns and delivers our script. Now, understand, our script is the script for discovering your dream. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 6, 7, 8. For discovering your vision, step 1, step 2 through 8. Discovering your purpose. Your dream, hear me, is the great result you intend to produce. So if I were to say to you, what is the great result you intend to produce through the company you've got? You would have to go inside and find that. And where would you find that? You'd find it two places. One, inside you, what you're called to do, and outside you, when you're thinking of your most important customer. And when you think about your most important customer, you have to understand what is keeping that person from being who they truly are called to be. What's missing in this picture? So Radical You is a stunning reality that was launched on March 4th, my wife's birthday, 2018. And we have not begun to enroll people in it. We only have 100 faithful students today. But by the time we're done, 5 years from today, there'll be 5 million students learning how to grow, to grow, to grow beyond their comfort zone. Hear me, beyond their comfort zone, beyond what makes them feel good about themselves, to the point where there's someone they've never met before. And the beauty of it all is everybody can afford it. The Dreaming Room, tuition for a year. Our entrepreneurial development school is only $479.40 for a whole year tuition.
I love it. Well, we're closing up on time here. And the place that I have here from your lovely wife that's for people to go to learn more is Radical You, that's just the letter U, /invite. And I'm not 100% mistaken, or there's a process that you'll go through, I'm sure, to some degree. You
there better be.
of which they'll get to learn more about you. But thank you so much for all your time and your wisdom. And even the way you explain at the end, there's nobility in every job, and it can grow into something great. Jesse?
Awesome. Thank you for Michael Gerber for being with us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jesse. Thanks, Rich.
Do you have followers? Do you have an audience? Do you have influence that you haven't turned into money? We can. YouTubers, podcasters, speakers, streamers, authors, and Instagrammers, we can help you turn your influence into money with a print-on-demand store on Ecwid. Not only do we know how to build it, we'll build it for you. If you are that influencer that's ready for results, we have an opportunity for you. Email podcasts@ecwid.com. That's podcasts with an S at ecwid.com.